Okay, doing that now. So when we start our sessions, we always like to ask what you would like to get out of the session for today. So obviously you've got on your green form the main things that you're interested in, your symptoms and stuff. So the brain fog, energy levels, and the dizziness. Is there anything that at the end of the session today you'll go, yes, I've achieved that. I've satisfied that curiosity, or I've achieved this? Is there something that you...
Hard to say. I guess one of the things, because I did mention it to Teresa, but I don't know if you know, that I am vegan. I realize that I will need to probably make a decision somewhere along the line of what I'm going to compromise on that. And I have only been truly vegan for a year. So it's, in some ways, I'm wondering if going vegan may have helped me because it's gotten a lot of stuff out, but now I don't want to reverse that.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you've mentioned to me as well in the past, definitely, that you were vegan, and that from that point of view, you were... I think at that time you could see that decision would need to be made in the future. You were happy with it when we talked about it, but it was kind of like, okay, at some stage I may need to work out how this all slots together, but for now I'm cool with it, type thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's good to know. So what we tend to do is structure-wise, and again, we're going to try and expedite this a little bit, given your tight timeline, is we'll run through your 3 main focus areas as far as the brain fog, the energy levels, and the dizziness, and talk a little bit around that. Then we'll zip across to your results, and then we'll have a look at where we're at as far as a bit of a plan for you and that sort of thing. And you can, within that, this might just be the point of discussion beginning on how you want to do it as far as the vegan side of things goes. And if you go, okay, for now I'm going to stay vegan and I might introduce the cod liver oil first, for instance. And that might be something.
That is one thing that in the past I have had so much problems because for GAP, that's a big thing, and GAPs to add that in. And I try imaginable and as little as possible, and I consider it had histamine reactions.
Okay. Yep.
So, yep, I did want to mention that because that's not just a vegan concern. That's the concern of the...
Well, and it may be that, for instance, you could start putting it on your skin, and that you just see how you go.
Okay.
There's ways that we can sort of patch test. I've just muted.
Yeah, no, I've never done the skin.
Yeah. So it could be something that we sort of start with that. But I think the fact that you've already seen progress with the RCP and with the other lifestyle changes that you've done, that will have brought down your histamine bucket load so much that you may tolerate it better now anyway. And so it's just going to be that, if you go, okay, so I want to remain vegan, except I will introduce a few things to support my body when I'm ready, that sort of thought process. We can cover that, but there's plenty of other things that we can look at first and see where you're at and that sort of thing. Teresa's gone to deal with the dog by the looks of things. So I'll catch her up later if need be.
Okay.
So with the brain fog side of things, that was listed as your number one. That's all right. I've unmuted you now, Teresa.
Oh.
So if you need to mute yourself again because dog starts barking, then that's okay. You can do it.
There was someone at the door. That's what happened.
Right.
So I can't answer it.
Yeah. The dog was actually doing a job.
Yes, exactly.
So with the brain fog, was that something that you can pinpoint, at this time in my life that began, or was it something that you can remember from a long way back?
I can remember it from a long way back, and I remember always thinking, how do people function day to day? I'm talking, this is primary school.
Yep.
how do other people go through day to day with this weight bearing down on their brain? Because that's what it felt like. It just felt like a press going down on my brain all the time. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago, well, there were a couple instances here and there. 2 or 3 years ago, I started down the MTHFR pathway and all that kind of stuff, and doing the methylcobalamin didn't help me. The other B12, active B12 helped me, and the adenocobalamin or whatever it is. And I actually had about 2 weeks where I went, oh my gosh, is this how normal people feel? I was still tired, but it wasn't that complete exhaustion and having to think about, okay, I actually need to walk. That means I need to pick up my foot and do that. It wasn't to that extreme. It was just, I was like, oh, other people go, oh, everybody's tired. And that's when it clicked. No, it's not the same thing.
And I think
tiredness is completely different. But I got a really bad stomach flu right at that 2 week point, and I've never hit that sweet spot again. Not to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot better now than I was. I don't have that continual pressing. I do not feel that I have headaches every day. So that's made a huge improvement. The other thing that occasionally really helped me, and I've tried to make it myself, and she must just have a magic ingredient, is a friend of ours who we only see every couple of years, go to their place for dinner or something. She's Fijian, and she makes some kind of curried spinach. Now, it goes right through me, but it's not diarrhea. But I clean myself out, and my brain just goes, woo!
You know why?
Why? Because it's clean.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's spinach ingredients, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the spices and stuff with the curried factor.
Yeah.
So they have an ORAC value, and I only learned a little snippet of this, so I'm going to be a bit vague on this because it was one of those things that you just take in as it goes by.
Yeah.
But Molly was talking about it when we were in the US, and there are certain spices and things that are really, really high, and I think nutmeg is one. Couple of other things whereby it's not necessarily high salicylates or amines or any of that side of things. It's actually that ORAC value talks about how medicinal they are on some level. So you don't need much and you get this medicinal thing. But some of them are really effective at helping boost the body in other ways that, you don't kind of expect. But I bet you by the combination of those spices that she uses and the spinach that is binding to the iron in your gut, it flushes you through. Yeah. And that's why you get the clarity, because for however long after the flush, your nutrients will be going in through your digestive system unimpeded, and there's less inflammation in your gut, so that your body creates more of the natural antihistamine, because there's antihistamines we create in the gut lining and then some in our blood. And so while the body's kind of got that relief from the curry having done its thing, then you get that clarity of mind, because the antihistamines can go do that thing elsewhere, because histamines are a natural part of life. It's not when you're in the food intolerance circles, of course, we get in the whole, don't want any histamines. Well, it's just part of how our bodies work. That's okay. But it's whether you have enough of the enzymes to do their thing, to break it down. And what we find is along the way, our studies have taught us that bioavailable copper and magnesium are needed to make those enzymes. So when we don't have enough bioavailable copper and magnesium, those enzymes, our bodies find it hard to keep up. So if you've given some level of relief by having that curry from the inflammation, you've just given yourself...
It's almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I get, like within a couple hours, I go to the bathroom. And like I said, it's not a bad experience. I have plenty of those as well. But it's almost instantaneous. And yes, it lasts for about a day or two.
Yep.
And she's given me the recipe, and I've done it, and I certainly enjoy it. And I do think the benefits, but there's something not the same. Either I don't put in the amount because it is a lot. Like she goes, well, I just put this in. Yeah. And I just put this in, and I put a little of this.
No, a curry person have their own.
Yeah.
They know how to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some way that she does.
Think twice. Never.
No.
Yeah. So it could also be the supplies she uses. Could be that the spices are from a very particular. Maybe see if she's got a particular deli or a particular supplier she gets for those, because the ones you get from the supermarket, they've been stored a long time, so that ORAC value goes down. Whereas she might have certain fresher or, you know, more traditional suppliers of things. You never know. It may be, you know, U-Butte off the Indian store shelf, which is where I get a lot of our spices. But like there's Austral herbs online where a lot of them are organic herbs and spices, and the flavor between those and supermarket or even the Indian stores, so much better in the Austral ones. So
yeah, I have an organic store here that's quite good, and that's where I get all my spices from.
yeah. So anyway,
yeah,
that's a really
more, but yeah, I find that very interesting. So yeah, guess what I'm having for dinner tonight? Okay.
Oh, well, look at that. But also the spinach has lots of oxalates, lots of other things, and they bind to that stuff too. And it literally, I reckon it's the combination of all of it, which would be coming together at the right time to absorb the stuff out of your gut. It's probably the right pH. It's probably a whole heap of, she might put a dash of vinegar in at the right time, and she hasn't mentioned that or something, and that's helping too.
Yeah, this is true.
So she may do.
So I'll work on.
Yeah, have a bit of a play. Oh, Joan, I'm telling you, you need to investigate this curry more. It sounds like you'll be very disappointed in doing so.
I know it's going to be a real struggle.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, you started down the MTHFR and experimenting and that sort of thing, and you've had the 2 weeks of clarity within that, plus these times. But overall, I mean, it sounds like from what you've described, you definitely are feeling a lot more improvement overall, but it's getting you to that point where most days end up like that rather than, you know, a mixture of that is where we're headed, right?
Yeah, I'll still have, to make an example, the other day or a couple weeks ago, I went to visit a friend who's about 4 or 5 hours away and stay with them for a couple days. Normally when I make that trip, I get up there and the next 24 hours, I just stay in the room. I just collapse. And honestly, it's just a blur the whole 24 hours I'm there.
Yep.
And then I pick up and can actually go and visit and things like that. This time we got there about 6:30 or 7 in the evening, had something to eat, watched a little TV, went to bed, and I felt fine.
That's awesome.
So it's significantly different, but it's enough, especially with trying to get the EFT business going and trying to do Bowen and this and that. I am finding like, okay, I'm really good for my day-to-day stuff, but trying to get back into the workforce, I can already tell that I'm wearing myself down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to be able to keep going. I was here, now I'm about here, but I really need to be about here and stay here.
Yeah. And with the pressures of life of getting back into that you stay up here and not kind of go through the cycle of crashing and then having to stop and then go, okay, I'll catch back up. Yeah. Minimizing that peaks and troughs type thing rather than having it steady.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, we can work with that. It sounds like, you know, you're already feeling the difference there anyway, so we can keep on that track. And I guess all of that. Sorry.
I was just going to say, are you familiar with what POTS is?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Go for it.
With the energy levels, that kind of ties into what you were saying as well, doesn't it? Really, it's that combination of the brain fog, the focus, and then that leads in with the tiredness. So with the dizziness and the POTS and that sort of thing, when did that, either the dizziness first start, and then when was the diagnosis of POTS?
When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was walking down the hallway in the house and I just blacked out. They did all kinds of tests and things like that, and it was summertime, and that was a regular occurrence that I would black out. It got to the point where I recognized the signs soon enough, so it suddenly just sit down.
Yep.
So that I didn't actually plop over and injure myself.
Yeah.
And that was kind of up and down through the years. I only ever blacked out once or twice since I was a young kid. But at that time they did AKGs and all, or whatever, ECGs, both did all kinds of stuff. Couldn't really come up with anything. It wasn't until first time I went to donate blood, so 18 years old or something like that, that they said, oh, your blood pressure's a bit low. And they didn't let me give that day. And after that, I mentioned that to the doc, like every now and again when I went to the doctor. I didn't go that much back then. They consistently said that it was low. So like around 110 over, it was something in the 70s. I can't remember now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was consistently around that point. Sometimes it was even lower, especially if I was ill. Oh, I did have glandular fever at 17.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the POTS connection wasn't made until I was diagnosed about 3 years ago by a specialist at Austin Hospital in Melbourne. But yeah, my GP started making the connections there.
It's funny because a lot of what you just described with yourself, except the blacking out, I never quite got to that point, but I would wake up in the morning and I would turn over and I would just know that the day was going to be bad, that I would have this funny dizziness where I kind of needed to keep my head at a certain angle and all that sort of stuff. Now I recognize that it was probably crystals in my ears that were messing with the vestibular system and all of that. But they did various tests and never worked it out. It wasn't even related to infections or anything like that. It just seemed to be me. And I continued to get that into adulthood. And when it hit, it would be really bad, but it didn't hit as often as I got older. But again, my family.
I went through that as well. I got worse as I got older.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically the only thing that ever helped was the Epley maneuvers, or however you pronounce that.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. And but then I got migraines that set in and got worse. And so I think mine went on to other neurological related things. But all of that for me and I was always low BP. So when I had Lydia's pregnancy back in 2012, it was, I think at one stage I was sitting at like 90 on 46 or something ridiculous. And I felt, remarkably disgusting, and wasn't getting too far out of bed or anything. And then I realized that I needed more salt in my diet. And because we weren't anything like the clean diet that we eat now, but we generally ate whole foody type thing and not too much packaged food. And I ate a lot of salads and whatever for lunches. I wasn't adding salt because, you don't do that because salt's bad, right?
Yeah. Bad for you.
In hindsight, then I craved potato chips and ate it and felt a million times better and went, oh. And again, in hindsight, between the salt and the potassium in the potatoes. Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I understand that feeling, and I wouldn't be surprised if I had have actually done something towards it, getting a diagnosis towards POTS too, because the way that your balance gets affected, the way that the ability to turn, all of that stuff, it's all related. But for what it's worth, if you feel like that, get some cream of tartar or whatever your preferred potassium is and put it under your tongue. And that will give you a quick, because it bypasses the digestive system.
A quick shot.
To
do it sublingual.
Yep. And
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it works really, really well. And if you're getting a headache or you're just starting to feel that funny off feeling, if you do that, it will, even if it doesn't completely get rid of it, it'll stave it off and stop it getting as bad. And you can keep doing it regularly, every 15 minutes, hour, whatever, You're an EFT practitioner. You know how to do various muscle testing and whatever else to help your body work out what you need. But
no, I don't do a lot of that, but I'd like to learn more. That's something I'm not very well versed in. So definitely the POTS, since that's the biggest difference I've seen with the root cause protocol. And that's with the adrenal cocktails, which I'm not as good about taking them as I used to be. I still probably have a couple days a week where I do 2 a day, but there are plenty of times where I don't do them as much. And I really probably need to start picking that up again.
Yep.
Because it's rare. It's very rare that I have the dizziness or even feel that coming on like I used to. And usually I'll immediately go, oh, I haven't had much salt for whatever reason. I haven't had my AC. It's like, oh yeah, I need to do that again.
Yeah.
So yeah, huge difference there.
Yeah. No, well,
Right.
and I'm glad to hear that, because yeah, it should continue as well. With the adrenal cocktails, I found that to make myself have them regularly, because I've got to focus heavily on potassium, which I'm sure that you will as well. And this is where the cod liver oil discussion that we touched on before, cod liver helps the potassium to stay. So it may be that's one of the things that's worthwhile introducing as an option when you're ready for it, type thing. Is that I had to have it morning and night. Even if it was near food, I just had to make myself have it. Even if it wasn't at the ideal time, whatever, just have it, because you're better off having it than not. So if you think of it and you go, oh, I just ate, you know what? If you think the chances of you remembering that later are pretty slim, have it then, because I can personally attest to how much of a difference that makes. And now I can go 2 or 3 days where I'm a bit out of whack if I miss one here or there, and I'm fine. Whereas before, if I missed one, then I would be like, oh, you idiot, why did you do that? So, all right. I will get on to the results, and we will zip through them as best we can, and then we may have to do a bit of a to be continued just so that you can get off on time. So I've updated this and just realized we had some fun with Dropbox this morning.
Oh,
my Dropbox computer.
I don't play with that at all. I have looked at it a little bit.
It's awesome when you don't turn off automatic updates, like I accidentally.
Yeah.
So anyway, Teresa, did you want to start talking on this bit while I'm doing this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, did you see the multimix that Chick Dan has it's coming.
Gotta love that mental blank.
Yep.
Okay.
Hang on, I'll keep adding to it. So when we get the raw results, it comes in like that. I had forgot to add that in too. So these raw results, I've had such a cracker of a morning. These raw results give us a general reference range, but it's based on a whole lot of sick people, and they change it when they feel like. So the actual reference range doesn't tell us anything. It's like the lab ranges for our blood tests, you know, they change it to kind of fit with those who they're seeing. It's not actually what our bodies need. So the multimix actually gives us this one as being around about the optimum of what we want to see for ideal body health and that sort of thing, and mineral flow through the body and all that sort of stuff. So what we see here is that you are a slow oxidizer, and that's like left and right-handed. Some people are slow, some are fast. For slow oxidation means that you tend to hold on to calcium and magnesium more so than sodium and potassium, and the way that you use those minerals changes slightly from a fast oxidizer. So you could think of fast oxidizers as being left-handed, slow as being right. Most people are right-handed, but you do get some who are left, and it's not better or worse one or the other. What we do tend to see is that those who are slow oxidizers make a lot of energy, but they also lose a lot of energy. So we can see within your results that you lose about 94% of your energy that you make. So if you don't have bioavailable copper, you don't make as much energy as if you had plenty of it and plenty of mag. And knowing what we know about what you were just describing, and I would suspect and even assert that either things that happened before you hit primary school and possibly before you remember, or in those primary school days, and more than likely when your mum was pregnant with you and her history on as far as what minerals she had available and that sort of thing, you probably missed out on bioavailable copper well before you started to feel like, hang on a minute, you know, my concentration isn't there. If you already can remember that as a child, more than likely you were born with it. This is not something that suddenly developed over time. It's just probably emphasized over time because of the dynamic you had. So when you don't have bioavailable copper, you, as we talked about before, you can't make the antihistamines and that sort of thing, but also you can't make energy, ATP and energy. And if you don't have enough magnesium, then you definitely can't. So your body has probably been in a bit of a backup mode for making energy for a lot of your life, which is why it always seemed like such a big effort, an unnatural amount of effort to do anything, because your body couldn't mobilize that energy at all. But then just to top off, you know, add insult to injury, you also lose a lot of the energy anyway, just by virtue of being a slow oxidizer. So that adds to the, I'm just tired. And again, you know that you're starting to mobilize things better because you can already see that. So that's great. But it's one of these validation things, which I think we often need to see, that there are results that say why you are feeling the way that you are, and that you're not broken. It's just a factor of your mineral balance. So we also have a look. I've made a little table over here, or some marking up on that other multimix. So this shows where we would normally expect for you to have things like levels, and also shows us where we can see signs of stress in your body. So you've got calcium and magnesium well above the 1.2 where we would expect them to be. And
which is a real shock since I'm vegan, don't you think? Or do you think it would take that long for it to come down if it was that high?
This is a stress sign for us, a very, very big one, especially calcium. If you have been seeing big shifts in you because of all the EFT that you've been doing and the learning and that sort of thing, that will bring it down to stabilize more than any of the vegan side of things. The vegan side of things can actually make that worse. We often see vegans,
body holds on to it.
Yeah, it's literally because it's a self-protect mode that the body goes, okay, so this is what I've got. I'm going to protect myself. And so vegan or not, when we see people that have had years of very high stress environment, or a history of very high stress environment, we see these, and we see higher than these as well. It's called a calcium shell when it gets too high. So this sort of dynamic, so ideally they would be equal and at 1.2 here, and as you can see it's at 2 and 3, and there's quite a big gap. So that gap is represented by this ratio of 10.3. And that tells us as well, because they're not even, these are all flags of stress in the body. Hard to know how different they would have been. I suspect because you're already feeling so much better that you probably are coming in the right direction. It just takes a little time sometimes to see it in the hair as well. Now, what we do see also with your sodium and potassium is that they are pretty close to even, as you can see. They're not too far off, but they're way under the 0.8. So that's the adrenal cocktail has in part, that's why you've noticed the difference there, but you do need to keep doing it. And like I said, I would be encouraging you, just if you remember to have it, or you can do a cheap version where you have like take a innate tablet plus have the salts in a little container or something, and you mix it in some water, take the tablet, and you're done. As a backup, you know, you wouldn't always have to do that, but that might be a way to
What potassium tablet do you take?
I use either potassium bicarbonate or cream of tartar.
Okay. I tried the potassium bicarbonate, and I'm pretty sure I still have some here. And I don't know if maybe I needed to start a bit smaller, but it actually bothered my stomach. But in saying that, I take plain bicarbonate. That's something I take with me when I'm out, because out of nowhere, and that's something that's significantly reduced this year as well. I maybe only had it once or twice. My throat will suddenly just close up. And if I put bicarb on my throat, I do not swallow it. It is not a digestion. It's not an acid reflux thing, because my GP, not my GP, but other doctors have said, oh, that means, I'm like, no. I just let it sit in my mouth and let it get to the back of my throat, and it'll slowly relax my throat. And they're very confused by this. And they've sent me for various allergy testing, because of course the first doctor I told, he was concerned that, you know, I was having basic anaphylaxis or something. And they couldn't find anything.
It's a histamine thing. It'll be an electrolyte related thing as well. So bicarb is sodium bicarbonate. The bicarb helps the magnesium to go where it needs to, and the sodium could be at a point where it's very important for controlling flow of water and magnesium and calcium and things in and out of the cells. And it could be that what we're seeing here is as much calcium is out of the bones and out causing calcification in your body rather than calcifying your bones where you want it type thing. So the sodium offsets the calcium to a large extent. So there's a synergy there that if you're particularly calcified, so to speak, because of one trigger or another, that need for the sodium could be why you get that reduction in the swelling at that time. I'm trying to stretch my brain into notes here somewhere, but there's definitely calcium and sodium relationship, magnesium and potassium relationship, and then all four of them do different, like they all interact. But that doesn't surprise me, and it can be the stomach acid side of things by taking the bicarbonate. Again, a pinch under your tongue probably won't cause you the same upset as taking the potassium bicarbonate, but it could be that on those occasions you had the bicarbonate a bit too close to when you had food there. Another thing that we see, and I'll quickly zip across here on this other tab, and I'll send a copy of this so that you can have a look rather than stay here too long, because I know you've got to go very soon. But there's flags here that you're not digesting your protein overly well, which generally flags to us that people don't have enough stomach acid, which again is very, very makes sense with the factor of if you don't have enough minerals, you can't make enough stomach acid, which means that you can't break your food down properly, which means that you can't get more minerals, and the whole thing continues. So
just before Christmas, maybe even been as early as November, but somewhere in there, and it wouldn't have shown up in my hair sample then probably. All of a sudden it clicked because I do enzymes. I've taken enzymes for a while. All of a sudden I went, why did I stop taking HCl? So now I've been taking HCl.
Good.
And that does make a difference. I can definitely tell the difference. But that's only been it wouldn't have even been a whole 2 months that I've been taking.
Yeah. So that won't have shown up in the hair yet. And I've noticed, for instance, that when I started using mag water years ago, that I was very tentative with it. Again, it's another quite alkaline thing that can affect the amount of stomach acid. And I would get a bit of pain and discomfort if I had it too close to food. Whereas now I can have potassium bicarbonate in my just general drinking water and then eat food near it. And it's not ideal to drink any water near food, but sometimes you just kind of got to. And I get no stomach upset, none of that. But I religiously use betaine whenever, or betaine HCl, capsules rather, whenever I have a meat meal, especially, and a main meal. Not even meat, protein meals.
Anything heavy. Any of my main meals, because I usually go with nuts and things like that, or my main protein. Yep. So I think that's really, really good, because that will help you with the bicarbonate thing. So I found that I can have the potassium bicarbonate anytime now, whereas I suspect if I had have started it 3 or 4 years ago when my stomach acid was definitely not enough, it would have annoyed me. So it may be that you need to extra make sure, maybe have digestive enzymes half an hour before you're going to have the adrenal cocktail, so that, have it a bit. Oh, I've never thought about taking it with that. I pretty much just take the enzymes with my food.
I started out doing the adrenal cocktails because I was petrified of using lemon juice because of the reactions for Lydia with my adrenal cocktails. So I never had a reaction to the adrenal cocktails or the lemon juice or anything. So you can definitely get away with that if you need to help offset. Because really you want the potassium, for that sort of purpose, you want the potassium part of the potassium bicarbonate, whereas the bicarbonate is helpful for other things, but if it gets neutralized by having a digestive enzyme, well, that bit doesn't matter, it's a byproduct. So the other things here that we've got are, when there's ideally all of the metals should line up here, so copper, zinc, iron, manganese. You can see they don't all line up here, although copper and zinc are not too far off. What we do see, though, is the gap between copper and iron here. They're quite, it's quite a distance.
Yeah,
so
I'm
that's
not seeing what, I think I'm seeing what you're, oh, now I am. No, I'm not.
I've got to remember that there's sometimes a delay.
Oh, yeah.
So between that and then here we've got 6/3. So you've got 6 out of 12 signs of copper dysregulation and 3 out of 5 of iron and copper dysregulation. So again, all flags of metabolic stress that your body is under. And one last one is that boron is nowhere near the one. That's very common.
Hold on, I'm going to delete your picture only because I can't see the bottom of the thing. But I don't think.
There you go. So it'll take a little bit.
Yeah, that's better. I was just afraid to hit it because I was like, what if I hang up on you?
Yeah.
I wasn't real sure what that would do. I was pretty sure it would just affect the picture, but.
Yeah, that's all good.
Yep.
So yeah, boron is not near the line. So when boron is low, that's a very good sign to us that iron is misbehaving in the cells behind the scenes. And so again, all of these, it's saying that you're not broken, that there's metabolic dysregulation happening, but that there's actually a reason why you felt tired, why you've had the POTS syndrome symptoms and all of that sort of thing. So it's not in your head that some GPs and doctors and specialists may have been going, well, you should be okay, but we can't really, here's a diagnosis just to give you a label. So
do I need, because the boron water is not something I'm very good about.
What were you going to say, Teresa? Sorry.
I was going to ask, when did you get diagnosed as celiac?
2008, 2009, something in there.
Yep.
And that was done both with an antibody test and genetic. I just had the genetic markers for it as well.
Oh, okay, and you had the antibodies as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would have, the blood tests that you sent through that were from 2008, would that have been around that era when you found out, give or take? It's April 2008 that was dated as.
I would think so. I'm trying to remember. It would have been 2009 because I was diagnosed just before when my daughter was in 3rd grade. So now that I'm thinking about it, it would have been early 2009.
Yep.
Oh, I don't have those here. I don't have my blood results here. That's something else.
That's right.
I would think so. It would have been the same doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that helps you.
The only reason that I mention that is because it does show more iron inflammation then than now. Change, we can actually see that from April 2008, so before your diagnosis, that your available iron was lower, your serum iron was lower, that there was your ferritin was at 129, whereas we want it sort of somewhere around 20 or less. And now you're at 46, so you're much closer to that. So there's definitely, even though it was only limited blood tests that you had available at that time that fit in with our panel, so to speak, it really does give us a bit of an indication that you've gone in the right direction already from there. And you may have, clearly, if you know in that time that you're a celiac and you've changed diet and you've changed lifestyle and you're aware of the stress side of things, and, you know, there's a lot that's changed.
And I would have done fail-safe at that. That would have been a fail-safe time as well.
Okay, yep.
It would have been cutting out additives and everything.
And it also ties in with your cellulosis, cellulosis that you had when you were, I say that's when you were in the teenage years.
Yeah.
Was that when you had the cellulosis?
The what?
The spinal.
Scoliosis.
Scoliosis. I was diagnosed in my early 20s with scoliosis, but they suspect that it was from a car accident when I was about 5 years old, where before the era of everybody wore their seatbelts, I was in the back of the car. My dad was hit by someone running a red light, and I wound up in the front floorboard of the passenger seat. And of course, at that time, it was like, you all right? No broken bones, no blood. You know, you're not passed out. Everything's good. You don't go to the doctor. The only reason why, when I was 20 something, they said that it would have been from an accident or something at that age. And then I said something to my parents and they said, oh, we were in this bad car accident. But you seemed fine at the time, because the curvature of my spine was atypical for the curvature of my hips. It wasn't a natural bend.
Yeah. So something had been forced along the way type thing.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know you've got to go now. So what Teresa and I can do is we can continue on the video talking for a little bit, if you'd like, through a few more things, and then send you that video, and then we can make another time to finish it. I'm sure during the time while Morley's here, we can slot something in and finish it off.
Okay.
But adding to that, having a car accident that severe at 5 years old, I had a very, very severe one at 10 years old where I only had a seatbelt across my lap going 100 k's an hour and a tire blew, and the injuries that I got from that were pretty horrific. But I know personally the stress on my body after that time and the changes that led to in my bioavailable copper and everything else. Absolutely. I mean, you know my history from our tapping sessions and other stuff that was going on then with my dad and whatever else. But absolutely, that could have contributed from that time. Even if you had amazing bioavailable copper before that time from your mum, which I'm not sure you would have. But
I don't think so. My mother had all these complaints as well.
Yeah. So I'd say you started off on a pretty dicey kind of edge where it could have gone one way. And then you have that sort of physical stress, let alone the mental stress of, oh, you'll be all right, because you may have had pains, but everyone might have just gone, oh, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because back then you didn't, like I said, if there wasn't visual blood, broken bones, or, you know, as long as you were walking, you were good.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, indeed. Well, I will bid you farewell for your next commitment, and we will continue talking through some of where we were going. And again, when it comes to the what we would suggest type thing, we might pause it, let you watch what we've done, and then we can run through where you're at now versus where we think you need to go.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, perfect.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, you have a great one, and we will talk to you very soon.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. See ya.
See ya. Ta-da! See, I didn't hang up. Joan, when you watch this, the joke there is that I often forget to actually not leave myself when I do that. So we're here, we're ready to keep going. Oh dear. All right. Now I will open the right window. So Teresa, there was no serum copper in this. I was just looking at this before.
No, the Jane was saying that it was noted on the lab split form, but it wasn't either wasn't tested or wasn't put in the results. So Joan's actually chasing that up.
Okay.
So
they may have the sample still and they could run it through.
Yeah, that's what I said to her. So so she wasn't sure she was going to get that before our session today.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
Yeah. Well, it is noticeable that Joan having the celiac diagnosis and all that sort of stuff, it really does highlight that without even knowing what her copper is, that she's got really low bioavailable copper. Yeah,
I would agree with that. And what we see here, knowing ceruloplasmin is 20, is the chances are that the serum copper is either quite notably low or quite notably elevated, just because of that whole teetering that the body will be doing to try and offset the available copper. And also, so Joan, when you're listening to this, when we see serum ceruloplasmin, there are two components that make ceruloplasmin up. We've got peroxidase, which is our antioxidant component, and it's the one that helps to reduce inflammation. It travels the copper and the iron around the body, moves it around. It's the vehicle that is the enzyme boost, let's say, throughout the body to make things happen. And we also have, though, making up the other part to ceruloplasmin is the immunoreactive protein. Unfortunately, only in research laboratories do we get to see what those individual results might be. So in commercial ones and retail, so to speak, what we get access to, you could have half of your ceruloplasmin of 20 is peroxidase, and you could have half of it as the immunoreactive protein, and noting that that immunoreactive protein can't actually be actively used for anything. It's like it's ready to be recycled and you need to add a few extra components in. Ready to reactivate it, able to do its antioxidant work. So you could have 1/4 of peroxidase and the rest immunoreactive protein, or you could have mostly peroxidase and a little bit of the immunoreactive protein. We just can't tell. But when we look at your red blood cell magnesium being at 4.9 and your ceruloplasmin being at 20, even by the labs ranges, 20 is low. So we would be pretty confident to say you've still got a lot of inflammation in your body, that your red blood cell mag was probably a lot lower 12 months ago when you were feeling worse. And throughout much of your life, especially with the POTS side of things and the celiac factor too, you just wouldn't be able to absorb as much, and you've got high inflammation there. So there's definitely big flags. I would expect that the percentage of unusable copper that we would see here would probably be anywhere 25 to 35%, potentially, possibly higher. But again, because you've been on the protocol for a while, that's probably already come down. And that what you've also witnessed is if we had have done your blood test, say 12 months ago, before you started the protocol, your ceruloplasmin could have even been lower, or it may have actually been very similar. But now what we're seeing is, because you're feeling better and there's less comparative inflammation than there was, that you've got more of the peroxidase component in your ceruloplasmin now than what you did then. So worth knowing that, mainly because if you get another test done on your blood in, say, 3 to 6 months' time, that you may find that that is still about the same, or it might just be a little bit higher, and you might kind of go, well, I'm still feeling much better, and this is great, and this has improved more, and all that sort of thing. And your red blood cell mag might sneak up a little higher, and your iron might settle down. Again, it's overall not too bad for some components, quite close to the healthy target levels. That might settle down a bit more, and again, you're feeling generally quite good, and yet you're going, but my ceruloplasmin is still relatively low. Well, that's, again, because you're still likely to be building up more of the peroxidase, you're getting less and less inflammation, and then over the period of the next couple of years, you'll see that it will get closer and closer to the 35 that we would like to see it, and your red blood cell mag will go up closer to the 6.5 where we would like to see it. So that's what I can give you as a bit of a summary on your blood. So again, just to highlight that, you've got red blood cell mag as being 4.9, ideally 6.5, so it's quite a bit to go. Your plasma zinc, I didn't touch on too much. We generally see that when iron is high in the tissues, that plasma zinc is low, and this is quite a notably low compared to what we see as a broad spectrum of ranges. Again, very common when there's stored iron in the tissues. The risk factor of you being celiac, again, that's a big flag for us of high iron throughout your organs, your digestive tract. That's, again, a good reason why when you have that curry, that it will be bonding to some of the iron that's in your digestive tract and giving your body a better chance of absorbing everything else, and less inflammation, and all of that probably gives your body a chance to make some more peroxidase and build up that side of things, because it's not using it all the time to deal with the inflammation. Again, we don't know the serum copper, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was probably, maybe 120.
I'm expecting it. I don't know.
No.
I actually expect it to be probably less than that.
Yeah, it was either high or,
Because,
80%, 80 to 25%. That's what I was thinking, is about 25% of the unusable copper is what I would be minimum expecting to see here. Again, obviously, Joan, when you read this, it's clearly a bit of a guesstimate. We don't know exactly what your serum copper is likely to be, but from our experience, what do you think, Teresa? 25 to 30% unbound copper is what I would expect to see.
When the serum copper is low and the peroxidase, the ceruloplasmin is low,
Yep.
quite often we don't see very high unbound. But so that means that there's no inflammation.
Yeah.
It's not usually when we see high copper and ceruloplasmin, that's inflammation.
That's right.
So, but because Joan donates quite regularly, I think that helped her in the long run.
Yeah, that's
true.
So
I don't think you're going to see that it's flagging as much because the iron has been managed to a point, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it could even be.
So, but having a celiac means that there's definitely impact of low bioavailable copper.
Yeah. And that's what we see with the ceruloplasmin. That doesn't surprise me at all. And again, coming from the background myself of having ceruloplasmin often around 19 or 20, that's explains how I felt over time. And also my headaches and my migraines, and when my head starts to be involved in any of it and that fuzzy feeling, it's when that bioavailable copper dips down along with the potassium. The potassium is often just a symptom management thing that I do, whereas when I get my bioavailable copper a lot more stable with extra whole food vitamin C and that sort of thing, that's when that settles down, and I don't need to juggle the potassium as much because it's naturally stabilized. So, and that makes sense with what you said, Teresa, about Joan being a regular blood donator already, is these levels are really close to, it's 2.8, not far from 3 ideal. 95 is really close to 100 ideal. TIBC is elevated at 400 instead of 285, but that doesn't surprise me because the red blood cell mag is low. Yeah. And so, Joan, we see this 400 level TIBC. That's really common when we actually are dealing with low red blood cell mag. As soon as that mag starts to go up, that level will settle down by itself. It's the body is doing a dance to keep the right amount of iron available so that things like your hemoglobin is sitting at 129, which is a good level. And again, keeping as much inflammation in the body down as it can. So 46, it would be great if that was closer to 20, but it's not too bad. I'm sure with everything else, it's probably settling down as you're doing more of the root cause protocol and continuing donations.
I suspect that ferritin would have been higher, much higher.
Yeah.
If you hadn't done any donation of blood.
Oh, especially from the celiac angle, it's just more and more deposits of iron and more blocking of nutrients from getting absorbed. And on the plasma zinc, Joan, it being 60, so iron is like the older brother that always gets his way. It literally bosses its way into the body. So you've already got an iron imbalance because of what we can see with the low bioavailable copper, the celiac disease, the history that you've explained to us. And then we see zinc at that level. That really means that the body is selectively absorbing and saving more of the iron, even though it doesn't need it, just because of the balance that you've got at the moment. So where we really go from there is you would already have stopped the stops, but this is always a timely reminder to make sure that you've stopped the stops, because sometimes we forget them. Mainly these days is if there's hidden citrate in foods. Again, I think you've been around mag long enough to avoid that. And the fluoride products, I think, is what a lot of people forget or leave it to last. I was one of them, using normal toothpaste and just going, yeah, I'll get to it. And then going, oh, hang on, I need to actually remember to do that. So make sure that you use whole food oils where you can, coconut oil. Again, if and when you're comfortable with it, butter would be really good. This is entirely one of those up to you type recommendations. From our point of view, butter has retinol, which is going to help you stabilize the potassium side of things, which is so important with the POTS and with that stability and that sort of thing on how you feel with low blood pressure type thing. Again, because that's where you naturally sit. The retinol will actually hold on to that potassium in the cells far better. So Butter is good, but again, I don't know if you can get to know a farmer who you are aware of their farming practices, that they're ethical, that they take care of their animals and that sort of thing, whether you could get butter from them so that you've got that happy medium between animal welfare and getting your nourishment as well. That's what we've talked about with some vegetarians in the past, is that they're happy with that, to find a local farmer, and then you're supporting a local business, and we all want to try and support the local farmers and that sort of thing, I'm sure. So again,
and Joan, and where Joan lives, she's kind of right on the edge of the country too, so
yeah.
she might even be able to find someone locally.
So if you can find someone who's got a cow and you could get some cream and make your own butter, or find someone you know who's got a Thermomix or something to whip up cream into butter and have that, use some cream in. And again, I don't know if you tolerate cream and dairy okay anyway, given some celiacs won't tolerate dairy exceptionally well. But the butter side of things is often tolerated way better. But if you can use cream in your cooking from, again, a good source, grass-fed cows, and where it's ethical, that might be a really great way to get some good fats into you beyond what you already eat, but also this retinol that's so important for the potassium stabilization and extra fats, which are always good. So then when we talk, and I'm going to talk broadly on this because we didn't get to chat about too much what you're doing now, I'm going to summarize where we would generally direct people. And again, I'm going to talk in general terms, including the animal products. And I know that we will review this with you after you listen to this. But using mineral drops in the water is really worthwhile. So if you haven't already started using Amina's Daily Boost or something like that in your drinking water, or having some of that in tea or cooking or anything like that, then that's really worthwhile. We do know that you have started the adrenal cocktails, and you said that it was generally 1 per day, sometimes 2. I think that the more you can do that, that will be really important to get that stability there.
And you could even do 3 days if you could get it in. It probably would be very useful for you.
I found that last year was a game changer for me when I started to do 3, when I went, I could really do with that. And sometimes it may not even be a strictly adrenal cocktail-y thing. Like for me, sometimes in the evening, I feel like having, of all things, apple cider vinegar or one of my balsamic vinegar drinks where I put it in soda water and have some juice in it. And so I'll have lemon juice or orange juice, and I'll put just a little bit of salt and other things. So it's not a formal adrenal cocktail, but just something extra. So following the cravings of your body, Joan, is really, really worthwhile. If you feel like you could actually do with a bit of a boost in the evening before bed, for instance, and between dinner and going to bed, it can be a perfect time to do it. Or if you wake up a lot during the night, sometimes that's your body actually needs a bit of extra energy overnight to do with the repair and the recovery and that sort of thing. So you, may find that an extra adrenal cocktail sometime before bed, in the evening, whatever, may actually help you sleep more solidly. The cod liver oil, as we touched on before, that's a very good way for stabilizing the potassium. You need retinol to be able to make ceruloplasmin. So you can eat your carrots and your high beta carotenoid things, which will help to convert to retinol. But it's something like you need 12 different steps to be met from the time of getting the beta carotenoid type nutrients from your food until you get retinol at the end. And each and every one of those needs magnesium. So when you're a magnesium desert, like what we're seeing with you being at 4.9, it's very, very hard for your body to make your own retinol. Extremely hard. So this is in general, this is vegan, vegetarian, or otherwise, doesn't matter. But it's harder for you as a vegan from this point of view to get that, because you're not getting sort of boosted by having any extra from your diet. So the cod liver oil for the retinol is really, really good to help stabilize the potassium, but also for the ceruloplasmin. So I'll learn to type soon. So stabilizes potassium and helps with I'm going to shorten it to CP. So CP, Joan, is ceruloplasmin. I'm not sure where you're at with your magnesium, so we will cover that the next time we chat. Whole food C is so important for you, incredibly important. So it's an important source of bioavailable copper. So I would really encourage you to make sure that you are having enough of it, and potentially your enough is likely to be higher than many others. Again, keep doing the digestive support so that you absorb what you're eating better, but also making sure that you probably need more. So in the clients we see, and again in my personal experience, I need 2 innate response tablets per day, which is 800 milligrams per day minimum, before I count in adrenal cocktails and before I count in food and that sort of thing. So you really may need a fair bit more than you anticipate here. And because of not having the beef liver, that's another very big source of it. And a smaller source, but a better bioavailable source, is the bee pollen side of things. So again, I know that normally vegan people choose not to do any animal products or byproducts and that sort of thing. But again, I don't know if you could find a local beekeeper and get bee pollen and even build into using just a few grains every day, so it's a more sustainable thing, because for the bees, it's a bit of hard work that they make it. So you may not want to use a full half teaspoon, but even using a few of the little granules under your tongue every day, that's reducing your footprint, so to speak, environmentally and on the bees. But it's non-invasive type thing anyway. It doesn't hurt the bees, or you're not killing any bees by doing it, and they still will have enough. I think it's to do with the enzyme creation for them. So they use the bee pollen to make honey. My beekeeper taught me this. So they actually put some of their saliva with it, and that converts the pollen and the other collected nectar and things from the bees into honey, which is pretty cool. But that's also how come it's so bioavailable and so useful to us, because the bees have already done their magic with it and put it in little parcels ready for us to use. Now, the rice bran, again, that's something that I think you probably can consider. Again, we'll talk more on that later, just purely because I don't know where you're at with that side of things. The silica or diatomaceous earth, taurine, again, because you aren't eating animal products, I would be suggesting that you definitely need to do the taurine as a supplement. Again, it may be something that you would be okay with using eggs from ethically sourced, free range people, or if you've got friends that have got chickens that you know are well cared for and not stressed or anything. This is going to come down to your choices. So there's no judgment by us or no expectation or anything else, but you do get taurine and some other goodies from eating eggs. So especially the egg yolk being runny is a good way to get some other nutrients as well. So it just depends on what you're comfortable and when that time is right for you, if you become comfortable. So ancestral, well, again, that's clearly in and around all of the food that we've been talking about a little bit today, and awareness of the fact that you're a vegan. You're already going to be eating a lot more variety because of the choices you make to be vegan, and by being gluten-free, that you're probably eating better quality food than most people anyhow. But it's just worthwhile trying to eat plenty of good fats, whole foods, not relying heavily on sweet fruits or whatever when you're having choices, but going for seeds and nuts and vegetables where you can, and getting that diversity across lots of different types of plants and other nutrients is really worthwhile. Oops. And then iodine, wouldn't worry about this anytime soon, but when you eat foods like kelp, and seaweed and stuff like that, that's a perfect way to get more iodine. You don't need to supplement with that. You don't want to until your magnesium is a little bit higher, well, a fair bit higher actually, optimum. I think that's probably, we do have this other protocol tab, but other than getting started on the wheat germ oil fairly soon and making sure that there's regular adrenal cocktails. Without knowing what Joan's currently doing, Teresa, I don't know that we can make too many other suggestions. So do you have anything else to add?
Well, it's a bit hard to continue on. I think we could just have a really quick contact with her after she's viewed this.
Yeah.
And then we can quickly go through this with her. What do you think?
Yep, I think so.
Wheat germ oil is supposed to be gluten-free.
Yeah.
So it should be okay.
Yeah, yep. And I just add that in because I'm sure I've had others use wheat germ oil who are celiac and say that they're fine. I've known of others who have said, oh, no, I'm not going to even go near that. But I think part of that is the flight, fight kind of fear thing. I don't know. Hard to be sure. But we will have some of the wheat germ oil and stuff coming very soon. So I think that would be worthwhile trialing. And then certainly digestive support. That can be, you know, using your HCl like you'd reminded yourself, and potentially enzymes, and getting adrenal cocktail. And adrenal cocktails regularly, so 2 per day, 3 if needed. Something like the Amina's Daily Boost in water is great to start anytime now. So I've said start slowly. So you might, Joan, put 1/2 ml, and you could already be doing some of this, so just disregard that potentially, but 1/2 ml of the Amina's Daily Boost in a 1 litre bottle, or even less, a few drops to begin with, just to get a little bit in here and there, and then work your way up. My husband and I have 5 ml per day now, so it really does just depend on the individuals. So I think broadly we better just leave this to be ready. I'll adjust some of these once we finish talking, but other than that, I don't know that there's too much to add right now until you have a bit of a review of this, Joan, and we'll go from there.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, I'll stop this share, and then we will log off now, Joan, and we'll talk to you later.
Yep.